I remember I was going to say something stupid and irrelevant to Zach about what I thought he should do, like a jackass. I was like, hey, Zach. And Zach goes, And I was like, do not talk to that man right now. He's in the zone.
No, I get, I was telling Bob, I get like very like locked in.
I get it.
Heat-seeking.
I totally get it.
I do the same thing like when I compete too. Like if I do anything competitive, like it's...
Let's do this.
Yeah, it's fucking locked in.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's time to destroy.
Feeling rough.
You guys did great.
Can you turn my headphones up at all? Is there a volume to do that or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that better?
That's better. I feel like my headphones were low.
Well,
Hey, video people. Yeah, we did our standing up comedy last night, and Zach kept it clean. I mean, he did you have like one drink? I saw you were drinking water at one point.
Yeah, I had one drink right at the beginning and then I drank water.
I noticed that too. I was like, I kind of admired it. I was like, this guy's he's being serious about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was cool.
I drank buckets of beer.
Well, the thing about it
this morning.
is it is comedy, yes.
Yeah.
But those people take it seriously. Like it's not it's not a joke. You know what I mean? Like it's about jokes, but it's not a joke. Those people take it seriously.
Yeah, like it's a craft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I messaged him earlier. I'm like, hey, you want to meet at the house for some pre-gaming? He's like, no, they don't like drunk comics.
Yeah.
Careful on the pre-game. I'm like,
Nobody seemed intoxicated when they went up.
No, I
one's
was
bad.
by the time we left, but I was keeping it even. But we did go through a lot of buckets of beer.
Yeah.
Had a Taco Bell picnic at 12 o'clock last night. And
That's gross.
got home.
So happy I didn't.
I forgot that you hate Taco
I
Bell.
fucking hate Taco
I don't
Bell.
understand. Do you like tacos?
Yeah, I like real tacos.
Like when you say real tacos, you mean like authentic or
Yeah,
like hillbilly tacos?
No, like real fucking authentic tacos.
But like if somebody takes some ground beef and some Ortega taco seasoning, it's not for you.
I'll eat that. I won't eat the dog food from Taco Bell.
Man, I had 2 steak quesadillas and
feel uncomfortable.
and a
Shit.
chili cheese burrito
Is that
last
better?
night. It was rough. Mike slept in the studio, so I haven't looked in a mirror yet today. So no, I'm trying to see in the monitor if my hair is even messed up.
You look beautiful,
Mike,
as always.
Mike woke up and was not happy this morning in the studio.
No, I'm ready to go home.
Yeah, Mike's been ready to go home since the day started.
Like I said, I've been the hype man going on 12 hours now.
I know.
I'm ready to take a break.
You've done a fine job of being the hype man. You've been a good hype man. Oh, I'm feeling rough. Something about coming into this closed room just made everything
it's
way
hot.
worse.
It's hot too.
Oh, we should turn that off. Actually, hand me that, Jack. Let's make it not hotter in here.
Not hot. Oh, that was a dog.
Hank.
That was a headphone.
Come on, Hank.
Come on in,
on in.
Hank.
You
I
gotta
like
lay-
Hank.
You gotta lay down. Be quiet. Lay down. Hank, no.
No.
Or is he gonna lay by you?
Yeah, he's gonna lay by me, I guess.
All right.
Apparently, Hank all of a sudden likes me. Hank hasn't liked me for fucking 2 months, and now he likes me.
He really was liking Mike this morning. I thought he was going to make love to him.
He
on
was
the couch.
trying.
He really was getting into. He had you pinned down by your shoulders and was kissing your face without consent.
Yeah, it got weird.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Ready to start the show?
Let's do this shit.
Yeah, let's get it done.
All right.
All right.
Oh.
Silence. That's good. That's all I need.
That's it.
That's good. That's all I
So
need.
you like 30 seconds of silence.
No. I mean, it just depends, if we've got heaters and stuff going, but we've been pretty good at locking down the sound lately, aside from the chairs creaking.
All right.
It is what it is.
All right. So here we go. And whatever I don't remember what we're doing for
It's like 48 or something.
48
Figure it
seconds
out.
of silence, whatever we're doing. Here we go. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Truth and Justice. This is your Friday follow-up episode for Season 5, Episode 35. In this week's episode, you heard the first half of a long interview that I did with Jason Baldwin back in 2018. In this episode, you heard the first half of a long interview that I did with Jason Baldwin back in 2018 in his office in Austin, Texas. in this first half of the interview, we learned a lot about Jason's personality and kind of his childhood. And then this week, and here in 2 days, you're going to hear the second half of the interview, which gets much more into the case and the aftermath of what happened to him. I'm joined today in the studio, as always, by our producer and editor extraordinaire, Mr. Mike Bussing.
Hey, Bob.
And the super duper... and the voice of the people, Mr. Zach Weaver.
Hey, guys.
And so he says, hey, guys. All right. And with that being said, I know we've got a lot of questions, so let's go ahead and get started. All right. Now let's go ahead and get started with your questions about Season 5, Episode 35.
Boo, ad drop.
There's your ad marker. Come in, and then I ask Zach.
Yep.
All right, Zach, I'm going to start off this week just like we did last week, since you've actually studied this case for many more years than I have. And this interview, I think, I tried in both of the interviews to ask questions and draw information out that isn't the norm, aren't the normal questions people ask. So I guess the first thing is, what did you think about Jason's interview?
It was really nice to hear from him. He sounded like he was in really good spirits, which is nice to hear from an interview like this.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first thing I took away, was he definitely sounded like he was in good spirits. And it was a fun conversation. At least this first half was a fun conversation.
Right.
At the end of it, when you start getting to the actual case stuff, it gets rough. But it was a fun conversation. I had to laugh really hard at the beginning when he was talking about that he was grounded for something Damien did. For Damien getting ready to run away, he got grounded.
Right.
And I literally had the same, not the same thing, but almost exactly the same thing happened when I was younger. I got grounded for what my best friend did. Now,
Really?
My best friend and I lived 3 or 4 blocks away from each other, and his mother worked nights. So anytime we'd stay at his house, stay the night, we could do whatever we wanted. And one night we were gonna sneak out, and my mom wouldn't let me stay the night at his house.
Mm-hmm.
And for whatever reason, his mom came home that night and he was gone. And his mom called my house, and my mom woke me up and said, "You know where Kyle is?" I said, "Is he here?" She said, "Nope." And I said, "I have no idea." Granted, I knew exactly where he was.
Right.
Yep. And then I ended up grounded for that too.
Gotcha.
I've been there.
So you could relate with Jason.
I very much so could relate.
Yeah. And you were saying, as far as he's being upbeat, I think Jason's always been, to be honest with you, that's why I can't wait for you all to hear the second half of the interview, because I was stunned in the interview during the second half when we got into the case material at the fire inside of Jason over all of this, because he's always been like the nice guy, the sweet guy, always super positive. He is, all the time.
Yeah.
And it's the first time. I mean, I have never seen an interview with him where he really gets fired up, and you're going to get to hear that in the second half of this.
Yeah, he seems pretty even keel all the time.
He always is. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the thing is, Jason is so smart. So like I said, you see and hear the fire in him in the second half that's going to be airing on Sunday, but it's not like blind rage. It's not like somebody loses their mind and gets pissed. It's all smart. Like his reasons for being upset are articulated very well when he does get upset. But yeah, I was just really impressed with Jason in general.
Yeah. And the story of him, the hide and seek story, I mean, that was really disheartening to hear.
Mm-hmm.
How all those kids got in trouble and how they find them. And these people are poor.
Right.
I mean, they're taking, like you said, he got fined $500. His brother got $500, which clearly that's the parents paying.
Right.
That's $1,000 out of the parents' pocket that they probably don't have.
Right. And they didn't have.
And I'm not hurting by any means. I'm not rich. I'm not doing awesome, but I'm not hurting by any means. But if I had to pay $1,000 for fines for my kids, like unexpectedly, that would hurt me too.
Right. Yeah, and he said, I actually didn't listen to the interview this week. I was there, obviously, in the room when I recorded it. But it seems like, I think he said something about how that affected their Christmas.
Yeah, he said they had a $100 Christmas budget for the whole family.
Right.
So that was like 10 Christmases.
That's right, yep. Yeah, it was 10 Christmases worth of fines for playing hide and seek. And it's also how he got put on the police radar. It's how he became a kid with a record.
Yeah.
Once they started targeting him after they went after Damien Eccles. Good morning, Mike.
What's up, man?
Let's ask a few questions.
You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Our first question comes from Brittany. How was Jason's mom, Gail, doing? I've always admired her dignity and strength during the whole thing, and she is definitely someone who's had a place in my heart.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not real sure. I know Jason spoke of her in our conversations over the years since 2018. I haven't asked him recently how she's doing, but she has been an incredible support for Jason, both while he was in prison and after he got out. And that was a lot of what played into when he decided to take the Alford plea and get out. A big part of that obviously was, they were telling him, listen, Damien's on death row. If we don't take this deal and you guys end up not getting out, they're going to kill him. But another part of that was that he was tired of his mother having to go through this, having her son in prison, and he saw how hard it was on her. And so, she's been a rock for him, and he's also been a rock for her, where he said, I need to get out of here to stop putting my mother through this.
And it makes good sense. I mean, he went in at 16.
Mm-hmm. He's a kid.
And he was in 21 years. Is that right?
18.
18 years. So he was still.
Yeah, 18 years. Yep.
Yeah, I'm terrible at math. So 18 years. And, so he was in longer than he had been alive at that point.
Right.
I mean, that's hard on a parent. I mean, that's hard on him. But I mean, as a parent,
right,
you get 16 years with your kid and then they're gone for the next 18.
Right.
That's hard.
Yeah, it's rough, and she always stuck by him and always insisted on his innocence and kept pushing and fighting until he finally got out.
All right. Jeff says, Jason's recollection of standing naked in that hallway while the other prisoners verbally... All right. Jeff says, Jason's recollection of standing naked in that hallway while the other prisoners verbally abused him was heart-wrenching. How much actual physical abuse did he suffer in all of his years in prison as convicted? How much actual physical abuse did he suffer in all his years in prison as a convicted child murderer? I can't imagine how he survived.
Before you jump in on that, I mean, that was heart-wrenching. That story was terrible. I mean, I couldn't believe it. It was hard to listen to.
It's something we've seen dramatized on television and things like that, but something about him telling that story, a real person, a person that I've met and stood, and I've had, shared meals with, telling me the story about what happened to him is, it's devastating, especially 16, and they're all adults.
Yeah.
What was the question part of that, Mike?
How did he, or how much, I'm sorry, this is for content. He asked how much physical abuse did he suffer in all his years in prison?
I've actually never asked that of any of the people that I've worked with. I feel like that's something that if they want to share, then I'm definitely willing to hear them out, and I'm definitely willing to make that public if they want to make it public. But I never ask because you just know some of the things that go on in prison. There's guys like Ed Ates who came out and said, he had it pretty easy as far as physical abuse goes because he was black and he was big. He said, so nobody really messed with him. If he just kept to himself, but even he said, if he hadn't kept to himself, it doesn't matter how big you are. They'll just find more guys.
Yeah.
But because, he had those two things going for him and he just kind of stayed back in the shadows. He didn't piss anybody off. He didn't cause any problems. He got through it all right. And Jesse Eldridge, shared with us that he had to fight his way through prison, the whole time because he wasn't part of a gang or anything like that. So, he didn't have anybody having his back, so he had to fight his way through prison. Other people just have never really talked about it, have never shared. Kerry Max Cook, who we covered his case, some of it during season 2. He's written books about what was done to him, the rapes and the beatings and everything. He attempted suicide on multiple occasions. So as far as Jason goes, I don't know. I mean, I suspect things were very rough for him, at least at first. With him coming into prison not only as a 16-year-old kid, but a convicted child murderer.
Yeah, I think that's the big part is the being an alleged child murderer. I don't. There's a code of conduct in prison even,
Right.
And that's on the bottom
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I've always heard that there's, in prison there's certain things that aren't acceptable, even to, other murderers. Hurting a kid is not.
Yeah, it's on the lower end of everything.
Yeah, so I'm sure he had a rough go of it, at least at the very beginning. As a matter of fact, I think that I could be stepping out of turn here, but I believe he had to get some dental work done because I think he took some beatings and they broke his teeth out. I believe he has shared that. I guess don't quote me on that. I have to look that up again. But that just in the moment, just now, I feel like I remember him telling me that story. And he talks about, Damien talked a little bit about, and Jason talks a little bit about, for them and their experience, the biggest issue they had was the guards. It was, they could not get beat up, but the guards were not only allowing it to happen, but were setting up situations so that they could get the shit beat out of them.
Kelsey says, I never really realized how young Jason was until hearing him tell his story and saying he had just turned 16 before he was arrested. How did the decision come about for him to be tried as an adult? Are there any laws protecting juveniles from being sent to adult prisons?
There are, and they vary state by state, but in most cases, and certainly was the case in Arkansas, there are exceptions. For exceptionally violent or heinous crimes, they can charge. I think up to even down as young as 15 years old. I believe they can charge as an adult and try as an adult and send to adult prison. I think that's something I would love to see. We're in a presidential election year. It'd be nice if some of the candidates would address that. It's another one of those things where there's two sides to it. There, victims or victims' families certainly are like, I don't care about their feelings. I don't care if he was 16, he did X, Y, Z to my loved one. Send him to prison. Send him to that adult prison. But I just think I think our prison system is broken in the fact that no one is being, what's the word I'm looking for? Starts with an R? Like getting better in prison. What's the word I'm looking for?
Rehabilitated.
Rehabilitated.
Yeah, it's not the one I was going to go with, but I'd have got that one bleeped.
Oh, God.
No one is getting rehabilitated in our prisons. And I think that's the major fallback we have, not just within our criminal justice system, but our nation as a whole. It's not something, the prison systems and the criminal justice system are not something that we can ignore or isolate from the rest of our world here. The rest of, living in the United States. It's a part of it. There's a percentage of human beings that live in our country that are going to end up in this system in one way or another. I think there's probably a real high percentage of people that are involved in the system in one way or another, whether it be as low as a traffic ticket or convicted of murder. And these people, we create this deadly cycle where someone gets even if someone is guilty of a crime, they get arrested for it, they get convicted, and they get sent to prison. Well, oftentimes that crime they committed was a mistake. Obviously, it was a bad mistake, something they shouldn't have done, but they made a bad decision and they made a mistake. But then they get into our prison system that's supposed to be rehabilitating people, and they get in there and it's violent and it's dark and they have to join gangs to survive or fight or just take abuse. And it takes a person in a lot of circumstances who maybe was not a violent person when they went in, and it creates a violent offender inside of our prison. So I don't remember where this conversation started.
That's all right.
What was it?
That was all about him being so young and tried as an adult.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Do you want to touch on like Michigan going back through that, or are we good on time?
I think we're good on time.
Okay,
let me go back in. So yeah, with all that being said, I think that a good part of our reform that we should be looking at is, either you're an adult or you're not. I think it should be a hard and fast rule. If you're under 18 years old, you go to a juvenile prison. Once you're 18, you can go to an adult prison. And maybe that's not harsh enough, but I don't think that I don't think that our focus should be on punishment, if that makes sense. I don't think prison should be about punishment. Prison should be about confinement for the safety of the general population, and it should be about rehabilitation. I think if we focused on that in the way that other countries do, I think as a nation as a whole would get better, not just our criminal justice system. Imagine if when people went to prison for making a mistake, if they actually got educated and actually got rehabilitated and came out a better person than they were when they went in, how the bad cycles in our country would slowly start to course correct over time. In my opinion, there should not be an option to send a 15-year-old kid or a 16-year-old kid under any circumstances into adult prison. But unfortunately, that's just not the way the law works.
Well, I think there's a lot of gray area with there too. You said a hard 18. That's hard.
Right.
There's so many gray areas. There was a case here locally. It was a 17-year-old that stabbed his girlfriend because she was pregnant and wouldn't abort the baby.
Right.
It's pretty heinous in my eyes. He's 17.
Yeah, for sure.
Where is because he's a year under that. It's
I think legislating's tough, right? Because it's really hard to legislate for all circumstances. But then the bad part about that is that you leave room for interpretation or for variance. So it's 18 unless certain circumstances. So that they could take that kid and say, nope, you got to go to adult prison, and that's why it's. But then, what about the next kid and the next kid and the next kid?
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it should be a hard 18. That kid, he's going to go to a juvenile detention center until he turns 18 and then move him into prison.
Okay.
Now, and then this is just my kind of utopian world, because it's not really utopian if we're talking about, people doing violent things and going to prison anyway. But, that's how it would work. In my mind's eye, that's how things would work much better. Even though in his particular circumstance, say he was 2 months away from turning 18, is it really going to make a difference for him because he spent the first 2 months in juvenile prison before he went to adult prison? Probably not. But because that is established as a precedent, it will make a difference for the kid that makes a mistake when he's 15. And at least gets to grow up a little bit and doesn't take the abuse. I also think that we should have much stronger restrictions on the guards. Everybody I know that's in prison that's had issues, it always comes back to the guards. And I know there are great prison guards out there, but there are also a lot of corrupt bad ones. Every time I would be talking to Ed Ates, and I could talk to him on the phone for 2 weeks because they were on lockdown. And I'd finally get him back on the phone, and he's like, "Yeah, they put us on lockdown because there's so many drugs in the prison." I was like, well, how are they getting in there? He's like, how do you think they're getting in there? There's only, he's like, none of us are on the outside doing drug deals. Like, who do you think is bringing the drugs in? And that's so common. It runs rampant I don't think there are enough educational requirements to, I don't know who they're hiring as these prison guards, but they're getting these people in that are very easily getting corrupted. And they're not only bringing in drugs, but they're also, allowing beatings. It's a very common thing that I've heard from multiple different prisoners that we've worked with. How, somebody's got somebody on the outside that's going to give this guard some money if he arranges for so-and-so and so-and-so to get in the same room and turn their back so they can kill him or beat him up. It's just our prison. I know that's not what this episode's about, but it's a passionate topic of mine. I think our prison systems need to be better. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be punished or incarcerated for their crimes, but we need to do a better job of treating them like human beings once they are incarcerated, and hope that on the other side of that they come out better people. And that goes all the way down to the county jail levels. You ever watch the show 60 Days In?
Nope.
Mike, you?
No.
Okay. Well, I don't remember what network it's on, but I think it might have been A&E. But they would take. People would sign up to go be in prison or in jail, in a county jail for 60 days. And the idea was the sheriff of that jail knew there were drugs in there. They knew things were happening. And so it was a TV show with all these hidden cameras. But, for what they were getting out of it was these people on the inside can find out where the drugs are coming from, where the stuff's happening. Once they were out, they would report back to them. But what you got is an inside look into what the jail, and every season was a different jail. And you got an inside look into how things work there. And it was just, Becky and I used to watch it all the time. And it's just like, why are there no cameras? Why are there no guards? People are getting the shit beat out of them. People are smuggling drugs in. And the TV crew's cameras were catching everything. But the guards didn't know what was happening. It's like how, I don't know what your budget is, but if you just paid one guy, in these county jails, usually there was like a big open area. And then all the cells were kind of around the perimeter and 2 or 3 levels around it. It's like if you just had one guard, that their job was to be in that open area at all times, different shifts, three people over a 24-hour span, none of this would happen. Literally none of it. Nobody would be getting their asses kicked. Nobody would be doing drugs. Like none of the stuff would happen. I would just love to see that reformed in a whole lot of ways.
John says, on a previous podcast, you mentioned how in order to survive in prison, you have to join a gang. You recently stated that Jason had carved out a good life for himself in prison. How did he do that? Did he join a gang?
He did that by his celebrity, actually. So it was really nothing to do with anything he was doing. But, when I know that when he got there, things were rough for him. I don't know all the details of that. I don't want to know all the details of that. But things were really rough. But then when the documentary started coming out, and then there started to be this Free the West Memphis 3 movement, and that information started getting back into the prisons, he's told me about how there came a time where guards started talking to him about it, like, holy cow, you're really innocent. And other inmates thought they were innocent. But the biggest thing was once he got the guards on his side, that were like, okay, you're not a horrible child murderer. Lay down.
Lay down. You're not a horrible child murderer.
Right. And you were actually innocent. Well, then that's all it really took, because then they started watching his back and they started looking out for him. And then over the years, he I don't want to say accepted his role that he was going to be in prison, but he definitely made the best of it. He reminds me a lot of Adnan Syed, kind of the same thing from our season 1 case where, Jason was like, I'm here, I'm gonna stay out of trouble. I'm gonna stay on the good side of the guards. And he eventually got to the point where he got to work in the library, which, he loves to read. So that was a great job. He got to work in the library. And so, when I say he had a good life, obviously it's not the same life as being on the outside, but he was doing a job he liked. He was getting along with the guards, and they were watching nobody was trying to hurt him anymore. So it wasn't, so that's what he meant when he said, what he's explained to me when he was like, why he didn't want the Alfred plea. Cause he's like, listen, I would rather fight this for another 5 years and actually prove my innocence than plead guilty to this, because it's not that bad for me in here. Because he was so young, he really didn't know any better. He he only had 16 years of life, and he was living very poor in this trailer park. He didn't leave some big lavish lifestyle with wife and kids and things behind him, a life that he was trying to get back to. I mean, he was, like you said, Zach, he was in prison longer than he was not in prison.
Mm-hmm.
So he was willing to wait it out.
All right. Melissa says, it seems like Jason goes off on tangents. Maybe that's the wrong word, but I mean it in the nicest way. Or as he's telling a story, he kind of...
Skip this one.
Dylan says, good day, Bobby, Zachy, and Mikey. Probably one episode late to ask this, but I noticed that in the Eccles interview, their own investigation looked into the boys being killed elsewhere and then taken to the dump site. I've been going back through season 5, and this... I've been going back through season 5, and this theory I have never heard. I've never heard this theory before. What are your thoughts?
I've heard it before. There's a lot of theories out there. There's the manhole theory, and there's a boat theory. There's Damien talked about the truck, that maybe they were moved in a truck. Personally, I don't think that those are plausible theories.
I don't either. I think that causes too much traffic back there that would be noticeable.
It also doesn't make sense behaviorally.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so to begin with what you said, so think about what that means. I think a lot of people that believe that maybe don't know. I can't say that because I know some people that know the case really well that believe that, and it's no shade on them or anything. But for me, a lot of people don't realize that this wasn't a vast wilderness.
Yeah.
Now, if you listen to our season 5, you know that. But it was a very small patch of woods about the size of a football field that was boxed in by a neighborhood. There was houses less than 100 feet away from where the boys' bodies were found, and there was an interstate right there, and the truck wash. So.
Well, and you're not getting a truck back there.
No, absolutely not.
Site. So you're parking somewhere, and then you're making. There's 3 boys, so you're making at least 2 trips,
right?
If not 3 trips back and forth with a vehicle parked there. I feel like that's too much foot traffic, and it's too long a time period being seen that somebody would have seen something if it had been like that.
Yeah, exactly right. Because they'd have to park on the interstate, the Blue Beacon side of the bayou. The only places they could park would be at the Blue Beacon, and then so now you're at an operating truck wash, pulling dead bodies out of your car because it's a 24-hour truck wash, or you're parking on the side of the interstate doing it with cars driving by, and then hiking them back into some rough terrain through the woods, putting them in the water one at a time. It absolutely does not make any sense.
And if you park at the other end where the pipe bridge is, there's a house right there and apartment buildings.
Yeah, and you have to carry them across a pipe bridge. Yeah, and then there's a lot, so behaviorally speaking, too. So first of all, that would have to happen while there were people searching. People were in, and people say, well, there was times when nobody was out there. That may be true, but an offender wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
They know there's people out in the woods with flashlights searching, so they wouldn't go back in there. And so behaviorally speaking, if they were murdered somewhere else and then they were going to conceal the bodies, the last place you would ever go to do that would be back where people are looking. The whole idea of body, if you have the bodies in a vehicle where you can take them wherever you want to, I mean, you pretty much got it made, especially in West Memphis, Arkansas. A couple miles down the road is the Mississippi River.
Yeah, why wouldn't you dump them there?
Yeah, you get them away. The whole purpose in moving the bodies is to get them away from where they were killed, to not let the people that are looking right there find them, and for them not to be tied to that location. So behaviorally speaking, it doesn't make any sense. And look at the clothing, so that would mean they either were already naked and they carried the bodies and then also separately carried the clothing and then stuffed the clothing all down in the mud right there, or they undressed them down there. It just doesn't add up. In my opinion, they were killed right there. I think the concealment happened very quick, and I think that's a lot of what played into my profile, that you have someone who is a hothead, that they have a temper, they snap, but at the same time they are calm under pressure, which might seem like an oxymoron. What I mean by that is they can lose their temper and lose their shit real quick, but then in times of pressure, when something needs to be done, I think anyone that knows this person would know this is the person that always has a plan and can execute the plan very quickly. And I think that's why, in my opinion, within 30 minutes of the boys being killed, their bodies were in that creek and the offender was out of there.
You alive over there?
Morning, Mike.
I just had this thought that the offender wouldn't be a partier, wouldn't be a drinker.
Yeah, why is that?
Just thinking how calculated he was that night. Like, I mean, I guess you can't think in absolutes that way, but like, he's not the guy. He's not, like when you and I go out, like I loosen up and have a lot of fun, but you're always pretty mellow and you drive the car and get us from point A to point B. You're a planner. I'm not.
Right.
This guy isn't like me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, I mean, seriously, like there's something to that. There's something to that. I'm not going to use that in the content. I just thought about that. I was like,
Definitely wasn't intoxicated at the time, I wouldn't think.
yeah, right. That's what makes me think, well,
For
what I
sure.
just said doesn't matter. Yeah, okay. Mary says, I'm interested in learning just how Jason was able to rebuild his life. What were his biggest challenges? His greatest joys? Keep fighting the good fight, gentlemen.
It was a slow process for Jason. We mentioned last week how right after they got released, Eddie Vedder kind of swept Damian and Jason up and took them off to his place in Seattle, which is like it's a compound. Is how it was described to me, and that was kind of the start of it for Jason. There were TV cameras around filming him. We all saw him west of Memphis when he ate his first salad with Holly, who later became his wife. But he had a relationship with Holly, and they wanted to build on that when he got off. So that was a good motivator for him. He wanted to stand on his own 2 feet. So he actually, I don't know if a lot of people know this. I didn't know it until he told me this, but his first job out of prison was working for Eddie Vedder. Do you know that, Zach?
I did not know that.
Yeah. So after that first week or so, or whenever they just he let him out there kind of be isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, he told me basically Eddie Vedder told him they can stay there as long as they want. And Jason's like, man, I need to work. I need to get a job. I need to start earning. I need to start, contributing to society. And so Eddie said, well, I'll hire you as a groundskeeper. And so he actually worked for Eddie Vedder as a groundskeeper for I don't remember how long. So he was like working and earning a paycheck. And that was, Eddie Vedder's an awesome human.
Yeah.
Because what that did for him is it gave him in a very protected, sheltered place the opportunity to learn how to work.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, he was 16. He didn't work before he went to prison, not a full-time job.
Yeah, and it allowed him to be an independent human again.
Right, and transition into that and learn those skills, but in a sheltered environment where if he was freaking out or panicking about it, that he was with his friend who would say, okay, we'll just, let's calm down. Let's get you what you need. So, yeah, so that was a big part of it. And then, I think Holly was another big part of it. He just, he was in love with her, and, over the years, they eventually got married, and then his drive to help other people led him to start his nonprofit organization, Proclaim Justice, which, so I personally think in a lot of cases when people suffer from post-traumatic stress, that one of the best things that you can do to heal yourself is to have goals you're working towards. That, whether they're small goals or big goals, whether they're small goals or big goals, if you have just something that you can set your focus on and work towards it, I think that's very healthy, and I think that's what Jason did.
All right, Christine. All right, Christina says, do Jason and Damian still keep in touch?
They do. They talk quite a bit. Neither of them ever talk to Jesse because Jesse doesn't talk to anyone. He doesn't even have a phone. But yeah, Jason and Damian, I don't know how often, but definitely they're in pretty close contact. And I just know from they both told me that, and then there's times where I'll talk to one or the other, and they'll be like, yeah, I'll be talking to Damian, and I'll be like, yeah, Jason just told me the other day that XYZ happened. So yeah, they keep in touch. I don't think that it's like every day. I know it's not like everyday connection there between the two of them. And I think that some of that probably, just from my assessment of watching the two of them and getting to know them both pretty well, I think a lot of that comes from they're in two very different places, as I mentioned last week, where Jason is determined to figure this thing out and to right this wrong. And he's kind of still in prison, whereas Damian wants to forget it. He wants the wrong righted, and he'll help in any way he can, but he doesn't want to talk about it. So I think that creates a bit of separation between the two of them. But they're both still friends, and they do still communicate.
All right, and our last question comes from Nancy. Jason seems like the most down-to-earth guy, like an all-around good friend. Does he hold a grudge against Jesse and Miss Kelly?
That is a great question, and the answer to that question is going to be found in this week's interview. We get into We get into that exact topic in the second half of my interview with him, and his response is actually pretty shocking. So make sure you tune in on Sunday for episode 36.
All right.
Thank you, video people.
I could literally hear the music start.
I know. I could too.
Thank you, video people.
That's a wrap.
We love you. The hangover's really setting in now.
How are you guys hungover?
She's settling in because we were fucking drunk. What? You were drinking water.
Because I'm not an idiot.
You literally said on stage that you were an idiot.
I know. It's part of the bit.
You literally